Namaste. My name is Saumya Sharma and I'm an emotional and mental well-being therapist and coach. I'm a part of DLC's Health and Wellness Committee, a part of the Delhi chapter. Today I'm going to talk about how self-concept is really the key to all transformation in your life. And let me begin with the story of someone you won't believe the story it is of. Samantha came to me nearly at the edge of her burnout. She was working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Even Sundays were spent working while managing her family. She felt she could not go on anymore. She was fast rising to the ranks of the vice president in her company, and everyone looked up to her. But her secret was, a secret that she would never tell anyone, is that there was a nasty voice constantly whispering around her, which would say, "You're a failure. You are but a failure." And as we worked together, I found a 4-year-old Samantha, a Samantha who just gave a wrong answer in class, and everyone laughed at her. But that was not the worst thing. The worst thing for her was when her best friend went and told about this to someone who used to bully her, and together they made fun of her. Filled with shame, she wondered what was wrong with her. And then she thought, when everyone laughs at me for everything anyway, it must not be that there's something wrong with me. Maybe everything is wrong with me. Maybe there's just that. There's something wrong with me. Everything, maybe. And that's the truth. I'm a failure. And as Samantha was saying this, I whispered to her and I asked, "What did you decide in this moment?" I decided I need to hide. It's not safe to be in the world. It's not safe to be seen. Because anything I'm going to say, anything that I am going to show up for, it would just mean that I am going to be laughed at. And how has that shown up in your life, Samantha? I asked. Well, I hide at every possible opportunity. I may be rising in the ranks, people may really look up to me, but get me to stand in front of a camera or have some attention on me, I'm shaking in my boots. Ask me any questions and I'll answer it. But project me as a subject matter expert, ask me to write about it on social media, I'm shaking, I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm going to make the wrong answer. I'm scared that someone is going to find out that I am a fake, I'm a failure, and that they are going to laugh. And that's going to be the worst thing ever. Because you see, there's something wrong with me. Stories like Samantha are not just one. The self-concept, our self-concept, is really the driver of how we show up in life, of every aspect of our life, throughout our life. What is the self-concept, you may wonder? Well, in the simplest of terms, it is how we think about ourselves, our concept of who we think we are and the world around us. But it's not just about the content of it, but it's also about how this is organized in our mental frame. Self-concept is not just one thing. It's not that I have just one self-concept, but the fact that I have many. All of us have many self-concepts. And how we interact with the world is really dependent and is driven by this very self-concept. It develops very early on in childhood, shaped by experiences in life, the beliefs we take from them, the decisions we make, the coping mechanisms that we develop to deal with what is happening in life. And slowly, as they internalize, in our mind space, it becomes like a 3D world of our own, 3D map of our own selves that we carry around with each other. And that map is what we use to interact with the world. This becomes like a filter to the world, almost like an internet search. Every time I'm interacting with a person, an event, or anything that is happening around me, even if it is not directly linked to me, it's almost like an internet search happens in my mind space. And just like any other hashtag in the internet, there is a hashtag associated with every stimulus. And through that quick search, I find out, or unconsciously, I have the response that I have to that situation. We never really see the world as it is. We see it through the filters of our self-concept. The beliefs, the decisions, the values that were taken early on in life, in a frozen time, in another context that we are using to interact with an ever-changing and complex world. And often, the self-concept also interacts with and bumps up against other people in the world. I'll take you another example. Well, before that, if we were to continue on with Samantha, in Samantha's case, my self-concept includes that I am not safe, I am a failure, and so it meant that she needs to hide in the world. And so one of the ways in which this mental space was interacting was that she would hide and basically pull herself from expressing all of her potential. On the other hand, the very safe self-concept bumps up against other people. And here is the other example. Atul was sent to me by his organization, and they said that he was an A-plus employee. He knew everything that was required to be effective, and yet it was his attitude that kept him brushing up against people. People did not want to work with him, but they had to because he was just so good at what he did. But when you would ask Atul if that was a problem, he would just laugh and say that in the workplace there is no place for friendships and emotion. Atul's self-concept of a good employee did not include emotions and relationships. Imagine what happens when people with two completely different views of the world, views of themselves and the world interact, and they bump up against each other. In this case, Atul's concept was bumping up against that of his colleagues. Imagine what would happen if Samantha and Atul were colleagues. Another word that is often used interchangeably is that of self-esteem. And often people confuse self-esteem with self-concept. But self-esteem really is our evaluation of our self-concept. If our self-concept is in alignment with our values, then we have a high self-esteem. And when it is not in alignment, then we consider ourselves to have a low self-esteem. Let me give you an example. Continuing on with Atul and Samantha's stories, for Atul, in expressing his opinions to people around him, even if they're unpopular, is okay because it's a part of what he feels a good employee should do. But if we were to apply the same thing in Samantha's case, it would be almost life-threatening for her. It would feel like it's unsafe because that would open her up to a lot of judgment from others. It would make her feel like she would be negatively evaluated, and it's not okay. Same action, different meaning. And the meaning arrives from our self-concept. Our self-concepts are driving literally every aspect of our life, both positively and negatively. Ultimately, it's about what works for us. So whether it is our relationships, whether our ability to do the work that we do, the levels to which we will reach, our sense of fulfillment, our sense of happiness in life, how we deal with conflict, with change, even for that matter, our emotional, mental health, our physical health, are all driven by an internal concept, the self-concept. And often we go about denying it, dismissing it, or even distracting ourselves from it. Often we don't want to face what is really in our face. But the truth is, we cannot escape our own self-judgment. We could distract ourselves from being busy at work, or being busy with relationships, or moving from one activity to another, or through food, through social media. Sometimes we may even numb it out through drugs or alcohol or other ways of just staying away from what is here. But we cannot escape our own selves. And our own self-concept is driving our interactions with others, and those interactions lead to a certain result, and that adds back or loops back to our self-concept. So what I believe about myself and the world drives how I behave with it, and therefore the results I would get would actually drive it back to what I believe. And there is a loop that goes on in feeding itself forward. So self-concept is driving literally everything in our life. And yet, most of it is happening unconsciously. Let me share another example or two from my own client space. This was a leader that I was working with. And he said, my subordinate came up with an idea that was really good. And immediately I noticed myself feeling jealous. I was disappointed with myself and angry that I did not come up with such an idea. And inside me, there was this fear and insecurity that this person will take over and will actually go further, and I will be left behind. What did I do? I criticized the idea. And I criticized the idea to the extent that I wanted to bury it. Another example from another context. My client said that I've always taken care of people, even my parents. From early on in life, I have always been the caregiver. And now I am in a relationship where my partner is extremely independent. So when I try and do things for him, he does not like it. He says, "You're babying me." In fact, he does not even give me the opportunity to do things for him. And when he says, "Stop babying me," I feel hurt. But I've never really stopped to feel my emotions. And I don't say anything. The distance grows, and we don't talk about it. Every aspect of your life is driven through that inner concept that you have about yourself and the world. And now you may ask, is it then permanent? Is there no way to change it? Well, when it comes to self-concept, self-esteem, as popular as these words are, there are these two extreme opinions which are actually, none of them are true. On the one hand, it's very popular to look at these quick fixes of self-care and raising your self-esteem. It's not to say they don't work, they do. But the fact is, they work temporarily. They give a temporary relief and not a real change. So while my feel-good comes in that moment, the real issue does not get addressed. And for sustainable change, real change, the deeper stuff needs to be addressed. Change needs to happen from where the issue started for it to be sustainable. On the other hand is this fatalistic opinion that, you know what, self-esteem is just what it is. You can either have high self-esteem or low self-esteem, and that's it. You're born with it, and that's where you're going to sort of lose yourself in. There's no way to change it, and maybe years of therapy and then to maybe. In both these views, really, aren't we just passive participants or maybe just, presence in our own life rather than actually having control and taking charge of our life? Let me tell you one thing. Every single thing can be changed if you know where to make the change. Don't shy away from actually taking help from the professionals, because ultimately it is there that you're able to address and look at patterns that are deeper. But I'm going to leave you with something to get you started. For all change to happen, it begins with awareness. Right now, where you are, and you may even pause the video to do that, think about this and complete the sentence that I'm going to say. I am. Go on, fill in the blanks. I am what? I am what? I'm a woman. I'm successful. I am healthy. I'm fit. I'm a failure. I am a perfectionist. You come up with many labels. Let's look at the label of I am a failure. And now let's break this generalization. I am a failure. Have you ever stopped to look at where? This is a belief I actually held about myself for a while. I am a failure. In fact, for the longest time in my life. I was in grade 7 when I actually failed one of the maths exams. And my parents, both professors, were horrified. And looking at their horror on their face, I felt disappointed in myself. I felt like I had disappointed them and that I am a failure. The truth of the matter is, I failed an exam. I'll clarify further. I failed to get what was defined as the passing marks for that one exam. And basis that, I decided I am a failure. And that became the definition that I kept fighting against in my life. So I try and put in more efforts. I try and do more, but always falling short because, well, I'm a failure, right? So how would I even overcome this whole pattern of not being a failure? But the moment I asked that question, I'm a failure. At what? I came up with several specific examples, including that maths exam. And then I asked a counter question. Are there any things I'm not a failure at? Are there any things I've not failed at? And I could come up with several examples. So then I am neither a failure nor the opposite of it. I am a person who has failed in some places, in some specific instances, or not able to meet the criteria that was required to pass. And I'm not a failure. So who I am is neither this nor that. Just the way it's not just good self-esteem or high self-esteem and low self-esteem. We are not born in categories. We can't live in labels. We're human beings. We are infinitely complex, and yet we are beyond the labels that we give ourselves. often we go through life comparing ourselves with others as to where this person is better than me. Well, we spend more time comparing ourselves and looking at where we are falling short than actually looking at and actually investing in what are our talents and building them into strengths. Gallup has done a research which says that when you actually invest in your talents, you have more fulfillment in your life, you feel happier, you're actually more successful, you have better relationships. For that, we need to stop comparing ourselves to someone else. We are unique beings. So what makes you uniquely you? And that is a question to ask yourself. At the end of the day, your journey with yourself is both individual and collective. And like I said, it's not in silos. It's not in categories of good or bad. It's not in categories of high or low. Ultimately, the journey with self is a journey. And it begins with self-awareness. It begins with actually taking responsibility for yourself. And every step that you're going to take in this discovery is a step forward on this journey of having a healthy, stable, sustainable relationship with yourself and the world, where you are in charge, where you are in control, and you are all that you can be. Do yourself a favor. Take charge of your life. Turn within and build a relationship with yourself. So DLC is a very unique platform, a place where people from all walks of life, all kinds of professions, all kinds of experiences in life come together and build each other up through the resources that they bring together. If you are a member of DLC, then use the resources that DLC is providing. It's a treasure of knowledge, of possibilities, of opportunity. It's right here in front of you. The only thing you have to do is tap into it. Thank you, DLC, for the opportunities that you provide.